the win, the Bills' defense struggled, allowing 40 points for the second straight week. This has been a theme against good teams as they've allowed nearly 30 points a game against teams above 500, ranked last in red zone efficiency on defense. They've also allowed the fourth highest QBR. The Buffalo defense may not get another test before the playoffs as they finish with 2 games versus the Patriots and 1 versus the Jets. But still, Hawk, should we be concerned about this Bills defense?
I think you should be concerned because the Bills offense is playing so well. Yeah, we talk about Josh Allen, who's the MVP front runner. I won't say that race is over, Dan. I disagree with that. We'll talk about that later. But with as much production that you're getting from Josh Allen and the way that this offense is playing, the fact that they've given up 40 points in back-to-back weeks, and even that Rams performance from Allen, they lost that football game. And it seems like they are so scheme-dependent, and that the playmakers that you would have come into the season hoping to be playmakers have had trouble stopping the bleeding when they get in those scenarios. Now, luckily in the AFC, the offenses aren't as big a juggernaut as they're in the NFC, but you're still going to have to see a Ravens football team again who had that same problem against you where they could just run it down your throat. And again, this is a bad point in the season for this to be such an issue.
I think the last 2 weeks have skewed the vantage point of this defense. If you take away the last 2 weeks and they caught heaters. Also, I would point this out. With 1 minute and 52 seconds to go in the third quarter, they had given up 14 points to the Lions. It was 3rd and 16. Jared throws a beautiful in route to Amon-Ra St. Brown, just over defenders, catch, touchdown. So I think the overall performance really through the heart of 3 quarters was different than, oh my gosh, they got 40 hung on them again. If you go back, and outside of these last 2 weeks, which again I think are a little bit anomaly, they've given up more than 21 one time since week 1, and that was to the Miami Dolphins. So this is a defense that actually has been playing good football. They have played against 2 elite offenses that executed at an incredibly high level over the last 2 weeks. They were down 3 defensive backs. I actually walked away from the game thinking the defense played good football. They tackle well. They play very good in space. They're creative when it comes to the rush, and they're deep. They have had to play so many players this season. I actually think it bodes well for them into the postseason.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. With what Orlovsky is talking about. I think the score of the Bills-Lions game is incredibly misleading, as Orlovsky pointed out. And even against the Rams, remember, some of those points was from the blocked punt, which then automatically led to 7 points. That game definitely got a little bit away from them, and I get that, but I just think this idea that their defense is just this, just completely leaky and can just be attacked and dominated. I just don't agree with that. Honestly, listen, you never want to give up that many points no matter the situation. So I get that, but the reality is that there really aren't really any complete teams right now, especially with the Lions injuries. The closest you have is probably the Eagles because they have a top offense and a top defense. But if you look at the Ravens, they have a top offense, certainly not a top defense. If you look at the Chiefs, they have a top defense, but their offense has obviously been lacking, right? We know that. I'm not going to say that it's a bad offense because it's still Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and it will probably get a little bit better now that Brown is there, but it obviously has not been a top offense. And then look around the league. It's like the Pittsburgh Steelers have a top defense and their offense is good, but it's definitely not great and unstoppable. And you got to kind of keep looking around. I think the next closest would maybe be the Minnesota Vikings because I think they have a really good defense and a really good offense, but I wouldn't say top, right? The Eagles are really the closest to that. So it's not so much that the Bills need to have this elite offense and an elite defense. Their defense just needs to be good enough at the end of the day. And their offense, again, this is going to sound so silly to say, but their offense just also has to be better than the other team's defense. I mean, that's really what it gets boiled down to because we are thinking about the playoffs. And sure, if you face the Ravens, that would probably technically be the worst case scenario, technically, would be facing the Ravens mainly because of their offense. And you just don't know what Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry will be able to do because they could, we saw what they did to the Bills, but just even in general, come time playoffs, we know that they can put up points. So it would really be up to the Bills to also put up points and get after it. Not to say that they can't. I'm just saying it's technically would be from my viewpoint, at least right now, would technically be their worst matchup. You go against the Kansas City Chiefs, again, the Buffalo Bills are either Super Bowl contenders or not. You either slow down Patrick Mahomes and that offense that has not been great or top level, that your defense is either good enough to do that, and your offense is either good enough to take advantage and lay on the points. To really have Josh Allen be like, yep, I'm the captain now. I'm the number one quarterback now. I'm the GOAT. Stop with this nonsense. Your reign is over. You either do that or you don't. It really does become binary at that point. So we can get lost into all these weeds and say they allowed 86 points and 1,004 yards and this or that, and they have the 28th best defense but the second best offense. Like we can do all those rankings and compare them all we want. But at the end of the day, you either are or you aren't. And if your defense can't keep up, right, then it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the offense. And against some of they're like the Kansas City Chiefs, who, again, they might not be world beaters, but we know that we know that they're not going to beat themselves. Whereas at least the Ravens, there's still a great potential for them to beat themselves. So again, this is where matchups are going to be really, really interesting, honestly, because I trying to predict how the playoffs are going to unfold at this point are honestly pretty difficult. You would be pretty confident that the Bills should be able to beat the Broncos, the Chargers, the Steelers, right? Any of these other random teams that can kind of find their way into the playoffs. But the question mark will always be the Ravens and the Chiefs, because that is obviously, it's like, well, what is Patrick Mahomes going to do in the playoffs? What is Spags and Andy got dialed up in the playoffs? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, what's that going to look like in the playoffs? And then if you're talking about the other, going up, if you do make it to the Super Bowl and you're going up against the Eagles, because again, it'll be the Eagles, the Packers, the Lions, and maybe the Bucks. And again, that's where it's the same kind of situation. If you got to hang 48, then you got to hang 48. You obviously want a better defense here, but that's not the situation. So I don't know, honestly. I think the Bills, because at this point, the Bills offense, this is where it's kind of a little confusing with the Bills, because the Bills offense, obviously, and Josh Allen has been playing out of his mind. And it's been legitimately historic and legendary. But then it's on the back end of two games that they obviously didn't technically do great in. And I do think, though, that so many of that came from kind of soft coverage, prevent defense, and all that fun stuff. And so I get it. But still, you would, of course, feel a little bit better with the idea of like, well, even with that, we were still able to hold them to nothing. We were still able to get after them. That would make you feel a little bit better. And having back-to-back games where you do put up a lot of those points, it is one of those things where you're just like, okay, that's technically possible. And because that's possible, that'll always be kind of a concern. And you don't want to get into a track meet in the playoffs. That's not what you want to be able to do. You want to be able to be your own bullies. You want to be able to slow down these offenses and lean on your elite quarterback-led offense. You don't want these high-scoring games or even these close games, obviously. You want to see the Bills just be able to play bully ball because their offense should be able to do that. Like that's the thing. If they aren't able to come away this season victorious, like it's going to be so frustrating because the offense, we see what the offense can do. We see what Josh Allen can do. If the defense can just hold their own, that offense should be enough. I shouldn't say should, will be enough to beat every single team. So again, it just always gets boiled down to, it's like, can you do it when it counts? You either got it or you don't. And I am excited to find out. We are in the last stretch of this season, and playoffs cannot come soon enough. Not to mention, we still don't know what the story is in terms of the number one seed. Patrick Mahomes is potentially not playing versus the Texans. Will he play? Will he not? Obviously, the Bills have to keep winning, but they should be winning those 3 games. So it's going to be interesting. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Buffalo Bills? Are you concerned about their defense? You think their concerns about the defense are a little bit overblown? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.